Hey, Brian Thomas, got a bright future. You got a lot of work to do to catch this fellow right
you
here.
got to chase.
No
doubt about that.
Jimmy put the bar out there. Of course, the great Jimmy Smith, the all-time leader in receptions, yards, touchdowns for your Jacksonville Jaguars. And he joins us right now to talk about a little bit about the glory days, but also what's going on these days with the Jags. Jimmy, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Good morning, guys. How y'all doing?
We're doing fantastic, man. You know, I went back and I looked at your saga a little bit to kind of refresh my memory yesterday. And I'd forgotten, not only had Dallas let you go, Philadelphia picked you up for a brief period of time and let you go. And then you sat out the 94 season before Tom Coughlin of the Jags took a chance on you in February of 1995. What was that year like out of football? What was going through your mind? Did you question whether you would ever have a career in the National Football League?
Well, I knew coming out of college that I was probably the best receiver coming out that year. Only one receiver went in the first round, and that was Desmond Howard / kickoff and punt returner. Carl Pickens was another guy out of Tennessee that was a big time prospect. I always knew that I could play, and you know, when I turned on the TV that year that I was out, and I'm watching all these guys that were drafted behind me, some of them starting, and you know, some of them just balling out of control. And that's the one motivating factor that kept my mindset in the right place of trying to continue to make an NFL ball club.
What can you remember about Tom Coughlin specifically reaching out to you during that time when you landed here in Jacksonville?
Well, correction, Coach Coughlin really didn't reach out to me.
Okay.
Fortunately, I had Larry Pasquale, who was the special teams coach in Philly the year before. And there's a story that Pete Carmichael had graded me all Fs in the workout, and it went across Larry Pasquale's desk, and Larry went to Coach Coughlin and vouched for me and was saying that I was good enough to make a team. And I remember Larry telling me that Coughlin's response was, if he's so good, why is he sitting at home? Good question. And typical Coughlin response. So I think that went a long way in me becoming a Jaguar.
You know, Jimmy, as we look back, Jimmy Smith, greatest Jaguar receiver of all time, one of the greatest Jaguars, period, of all time, and hopefully one day a Pro Football Hall of Famer. Certainly the numbers make you deserving of that. It just, as you go through a little bit of these anecdotes here, it just reminds us, man, this is not a science, right? They want to make it a science, the draft and player evaluation, and you got one guy who grades you all Fs. You got another guy who absolutely believes in you. Obviously, Dallas believed in you. They picked you fairly high in the draft. It just goes to show a little bit. There's probably a lot of guys that have slipped through the cracks over the years that had the talent and just didn't find the right situation. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah. It's every year. You know, even if you drop back to college. When I was on these teams, you know, the Cowboys, the Eagles, and the Jaguars, they were, you know, I used to look around the locker room and I used to say, man, you know, I played with some guys in college that were better than some of the guys in these locker rooms. And it's all about, you got to have a little luck. Obviously, you have to have the intangibles. You have to have the right mindset to push through those tough days in training camp to weather the storm in order for you to be able to make an NFL roster. And keep in mind, me and Mike Hollis were probably we got a great story where on cut day with the Jaguars, you know, where me and him were kind of looking at each other across the room and kind of wondering who's going to be there and who's not. And as the day went on, you know, it was just we just kept making eye contact for some reason. And we were in the lobby and kind of, pacing back and forth. Well, not the lobby, the players' lounge. And just pacing back and forth, waiting on that 2 o'clock meeting because we knew if we made it to 2 o'clock to the team meeting, we were on the team. And that was a special moment for me me and Mike Hollis to kind of embrace and celebrate our victory in making the team and making it to 2:00.
I would have tried to hide, man. I've been in the bathroom or something until 2:05. I poked my head out. But, you went from looking across the players' lounge, not sure if you had a spot, to becoming Lightning and Money Mike. So if you earn a nickname like that, you've probably done okay for yourself.
No doubt.
Well, yeah, and you gotta say, there were a lot of people in my corner with the Jaguars, and like I said, Larry Pasquale, another guy, Ron Hill, who was the head scout for the Jaguars at the time. He was a scout in Denver when I was coming out of Jackson State, and I was projected to be a first round for the Denver Broncos that year, and they decided to take Tommy Maddox, and I dropped to the second round, and the Dallas Cowboys picked me up. So Ron Hill and Larry Pasquale are the two guys that I really give thanks for giving me the nod and going to Coughlin and vouching for me.
Jimmy, you obviously had a lot break against you, right? Those first couple of years of your NFL career. What finally came together? 2:00 comes and goes. You're on the roster here with the Jacksonville Jaguars. You've made the team. What finally broke right for you that the opportunities, the door started opening for you in your career here?
Well, I think it was all about timing and maturity. Even though I was very talented, it was hard for me to process the offensive play, especially in Dallas, because Michael Irvin and Alvin Harper weren't trying to let me break the lineup. They would switch positions a lot. And it was just a matter of me embedding myself deep in that playbook, and I didn't do that in my early years. And once I got to the Jaguars, I realized, I got to learn these plays. I can't just go out there on talent and just wing it. And that's what I was doing a lot in those early years. And I got in that playbook and learned the blitz pickup and really honed in. And I think that was that was something that took me over the top and helping me, develop into a good player.
Of course, you came to the Jags, Jimmy, in 1995. Your running mate in the Thunder and Lightning duo, Keenan McCardell, came a year later, as did Leon Searcy, as did Clyde Simmons later on in the offseason. But what did that 96 group of free agents do to energize the locker room and the practice field as you guys started looking around? When did you realize that you might be able to be capable of doing some special things in 96?
Well, the guys that came in 96, I was looking around and I'm like, most of these guys were in the same draft, in the same 92, 91, 92 draft. And you can see what Coughlin was putting together. He's putting together a young team within, under 4 years of being in the NFL. And you can see it develop. Leon and Keenan came in, and that was, they filled some big holes and solidified those positions at right tackle and the slot receiver and our Z receiver, which is Keenan. But when Clyde Simmons came in, that was it. We needed a guy like that with leadership and poise and maturity, who had been there in Philly and won, and he brought a lot of stability to our defense. And with the competition that Keenan brought in, me and Keenan never competed against the defense. We would watch the film and study the defensive backs in their secondary, but we didn't compete against them. It didn't matter who we were going against because me and Keenan were competing against each other.
Jimmy, you mentioned a moment ago Denver being a potential draft landing spot for you there going into your NFL career. Was that in your mind at all when you were getting ready for that divisional round game at Denver after making the playoffs in 96?
Not at all. Not at all. I think enough time had passed to where, I didn't think about that. My kind of payback to Denver is when I was with Dallas in my rookie year, even though I wasn't on the field. I was with the Dallas Cowboys, and we were able to beat Denver and a lot of teams and go on and get 2 Super Bowls. So that took care of that. Just winning those Super Bowls my first 2 years, because it's so hard to get to the Super Bowl, let alone get to two. And so what was left for me is not necessarily winning Super Bowls at that time, but making an NFL roster and making a home in Jacksonville. That was my ultimate goal.
Jaguar legend Jimmy Smith here with us for a few more minutes. Jimmy, who was the toughest cover for you? Who's the guy that gave you the most problems matching up with on defense?
I could pick a couple of guys. I think Samari Rolle stands out when you ask that question for Tennessee. He was tough, but Samari Rolle, they matched Samari Rolle up against Keenan a lot in '99 in those later years. They figured that Samari Rolle could take Keenan out, which he did sometimes, but most of the times he didn't, and roll the covers to me. I would say Samari Rolle, maybe Champ Bailey was tough, and obviously Deion Primetime Sanders. Yeah. Just being on on the same field as Deion and going against him. I was starstruck and forgot I was playing in a football game against him. Just to hear the communication on the field between me and Deion, it wasn't braggadocious or anything like that. He was asking me, was I saved? Was I a born-again Christian? Was I going to church? And keep in mind, I take it he was trying to get me out of my game, but I don't know to the day if he was.
Do you have a favorite play from your career, Jimmy, looking back at it?
Oh, yeah. We had a play that was, called X-Read, which gave me the option on the backside to either run a speed out, a 12 to 13-yard speed out, or convert it to a go route. And, my forte was running the go route, so I was able to make both of those routes look the same. And, I was very good at getting behind the secondary, getting on top of the defense and catching a lot of those deep balls.
Yeah, we recall that. Yes, you were. You had the eyeball communication with Mark Brunell, too, right?
Yeah. And keep in mind, having Mark as a quarterback and us being to, kind of, communicate without talking and, having the eye contact, that went a long way as far as, both of our successes in the NFL.
Do you have, looking at it since you retired, Jimmy, at all the players that have played here in Jacksonville? You obviously didn't get the opportunity to play with them, including the guys that are on the field now, Brian Thomas Jr. and Trevor Lawrence. Do you have a player that's arrived here after you retired that you would most like to have had the opportunity to play with?
You said it. I would love to be on the field with Trevor and Brian Thomas Jr. I don't know who would play the X. We would have to run a lot of three wides and flip the formations. But and I can play the slot too. I used to play some slot. I wasn't just a perimeter receiver, but those two guys, Brian Thomas and Trevor, and they keep me watching the Jaguars even when we're not doing so well. So, Trevor and Brian are my favorite players.
Yeah, well, Brian's pretty good, right? But if you move to the slot, it's only by choice, all right? Nobody's moving you unless you decide you want to move out there. So let's wrap up with this. The great Jimmy Smith here with us. Jimmy, what do you make of – we got Liam Cohen in as the new head coach, James Gladstone as the new GM, and Tony Vaselli as the executive vice president. It's been a big season of turnover for the Jaguars. Where they stand right now, the direction they're heading, how do you feel about it?
Well, it's got to be better than what we had. Just leave it right there. It's much better than what we did had prior to them. I like our head coach Liam Cohen. Don't know if he's going to be able to get the job done yet. I think we're all kind of waiting to see. I like the fact that Tony Vaselli has gone in there and he's bringing the culture back. I like what he said about upgrading our offensive line and being able to push the ball down the field offensively so the skilled guys can spike it in the end zone. I really love that line that Tony said, and I hope Tony does well because me and Fred are kind of waiting in the wings to join him hopefully in the near future.
Amen to that, bro. And we look, Freddie's made it a little further in the process. Doesn't mean you're not deserving. We think it'll ultimately come. No reason that it shouldn't come quickly, right? I mean, your numbers stack up with the best. And for folks out there, I think this is very interesting. Maybe some of the younger Jaguar fans who didn't follow your career as it was happening. Your first real breakout season came at the age of 27 years old. And then at the age of 28, you started a string of 5 straight years going to the Pro Bowl. So, you showed you don't have to break out at 22 or 23. There still can be a lot of good football left in you.
Yeah, but just imagine had I broke out.
Oh, I bet you've imagined that a few times, huh?
Jerry Rice who?
Man, well, let me tell you, again, go back and look at that 7-year run in particular, starting in 1996. Some numbers from Jimmy Smith stack up with the greats in the game because he was one of them.